Hello. Today I'm going to be introducing a new series for the app, and it's going to deal with some more specific features. In the introductory series, we were going over the core details, the core mechanics that can get you through a full game, right? Things like the setup phase, combat, playing strategy cards, etc. But in this series, I'd like to take a closer look at some of the rare things that can happen in the game that you still need to know because you might run into these situations. And the first one I'd like to look at is using flagship abilities. And in particular, we're going to be looking at the Emirates of Hacan flagship. So, for those who don't know, if we navigate over to the player info tab, the Emirates of Hacan flagship is called the Wrath of Kenara. And its ability says, after you roll a die during a space combat in this system, you may spend one trade good to apply +1 to the result. And then you also have the stat block there. In fact, I can bring up a little bit of a bigger view here because we have a space combat that we set up, and I do have our flagship in here. So if we hover over the flagship, there it is. I get a nice zoomed in view of it. Okay. So there was a bit of a challenge implementing this because, I mean, for convenience sake, it's better to just tell the player how many die he's rolled that are one off of being a hit, and then just ask him how many of those dice he wants to spend trade goods on, right? Like if you roll 5 dice and let's say they're all like ones, so they're nowhere near close to hits, then there's no point in this ability, right? So it's just the game would automatically pass in that case, right? But in our case, if you look up at the top left here, we've been in a space combat, and the game's now asking us to resolve the Wrath of Kenara flagship ability. So just to show you what the current situation is, we're the Emirates of Hacan. Here's the current active system. It's not our turn, so we are the defenders. We're at the bottom of the screen here. We have 5 fighters, 1 carrier, 1 cruiser, and 1 flagship. And we're being invaded by the Barony of Letnev, who has a dreadnought, a carrier, a destroyer, and a fighter. And we got those units here on the board display to see. All right. So we've already rolled, and let's take a look at the roll summary. So Charlie rolled, produced 2 hits, fine. And then we rolled, and if we look at the roll summary, we can see our flagship produced 1 hit, but also produced a miss. However, if we go back to the flagship, we can see the combat value of the flagship's a 7, which means that our miss here was 1 off of being a hit. So that automatically triggers this sub-step. Here we have a cruiser that rolled a 6, and cruisers have a hit value of 7, so this is also 1 off of being a hit. Carrier is nowhere near being a hit. We have a hit from a fighter that missed by a lot, right? We can hover over it and see, right, this fighter needed a 9, this carrier needed a 9, the cruiser needed a 7 but rolled a 6, so that triggers the Wrath of Kenara. Fighter off, right? So in total, we could count it up and manually and see that there are 2 hits that we could possibly produce using this ability. So how do you use the ability? Well, we go to the active system and find our ships, and we find our flagship, which is right here, and we click it, and we'll get a prompt. Wrath of Kenara activated. So 2 dice rolled values that are 1 less than required to produce a hit, and that's indeed what we saw, right? We saw that the cruiser was 1 off, and the flagship was 1 off. So we rolled indeed 2 dice that were just off of being a hit. And so now we can decide how many of these dice we want to modify to produce more hits. Oops. And if we look at our selector, we get those options here, right? So say we wanted to produce the full 2 hits. Well, now we're going to get a confirmation message asking us if we want to spend 2 trade goods to produce 2 hits. Let's cancel this for now and check if we have the trade goods. We do. We have 7. So we could have actually produced up to 7 hits here. If we only had 1 trade good and we tried to do the 2 hits, then we would get a prompt saying we don't have enough trade goods. But we can't show that here right now. There's also the case where we can pass on this ability, and we would pass if maybe, let's say, there were only 2 ships we're fighting, and since we already produced 2 hits, we don't want to spend any trade goods for more hits. So you could try to passing on flagship ability Wrath of Kenara, but we don't want to pass here. We're gonna confirm our action to produce 2 more hits and see what happens. So let's go ahead and do that, because as it is, we produce 2 hits and there's 4 ships that we're fighting. So if we produce 2 more, we should be able to win the battle, right? So let's click our flagship. Let's go ahead and select to modify 2 of the rolls. And let's confirm. And there it is. Alice used the Wrath of Kenara flagship ability. Alice spent 2 trade goods to produce 2 additional hits. So yeah, we had 7 trade goods down to 5, and in the log we can see that we spent 2 trade goods to apply +1. So now what should happen is Charlie should not have to assign 2 hits, he should have to assign 4. So we're going to see that. We're going to pass up on these ability rounds here first. So pass, pass, pass. And then we're going to wait for Charlie to assign hits, and we'll see that. Go to Charlie's tab, assigning hits, go to the active system, and we'll click a fighter for the first hit, and we can see that we have to assign 3 more hits. So indeed, the number of hits is updated. So once that happens, we assign all the hits and the battle will pretty much be over. Actually, this brings up an interesting part of the game here, because if you look at the board and you see this black dreadnought, right, it hasn't sustained damage because we skipped the ability round. So what's going to happen if we try to assign the hit to the dreadnought, we get a warning message. You say, warning, you are assigning a hit to a dreadnought that has not sustained damage. This unit will be destroyed and will not sustain damage. Right, so you have to sustain damage during the ability round, just kind of as an aside in this video. Right, but in this case, it doesn't matter. We have to assign all the hits. So Charlie's just going to have to suck that up. So 1 more hit to assign. And confirm. And refreshing everything. That's it, right? It's over. Battle is over. So yeah, that's the flagship ability there, the Wrath of Kenara. There are a couple other flagships that are implemented. We have the Embers of Flagship, as well as, I believe it's the Barney of Letnev. But I think they work the same, right? You just, during the step, which you can use the flagship ability, you click the flagship, and then you perform its ability. And that'll work the same way for other units that have abilities in most cases. So yeah, that's something that I want to go into. It's a little more niche, because you don't really see flagships too often, and when you do, you don't really get to see their abilities too often either. So it's cool. Yeah, so I'll be looking to post more of these niche videos in the future, so stay tuned. But this was fun, and look forward to the next one. Thanks for watching.